Hello, booktube. Daniel here. I apologize in advance for the hideous composition of this video. I am going to try to do a book currencies, as I call them, which is a combination of, TBRs and hauls and wrap-ups and currently reading and all those bits and pieces that are so used in booktube. Unfortunately to me, I cannot organize things as easily to make separate videos of this kind. So what I'm going to try to do is to just talk to you about the books that are currently in my life. So let's do this. First of all, I just finished a couple of days ago this beautiful book by Rainer Maria Rilke, an amazing poet. But in this case, this is a book of letters. It is called Letters to a Young Poet. I read it in Spanish. But actually, this is a reread because I find this book so appealing and so beautiful. This book has the philosophical views of one of the richest minds from the late 19th century in Europe, and it's written with a lot of ingenuity and a lot of honesty. Includes Rilke's takes on love and death, what is art, what is poetry, what is important to keep with yourself and what is important to leave behind, and what is the real meaning of having a point of view and an opinion about things. I find this book quite necessary right now in our world, a world in which it seems to be some kind of sport to have an opinion. So yeah, beautiful book. The next book I recently finished was this amazing story from Sylvia Plath, Mary Ventura, and the Ninth Kingdom. What is really amazing about Sylvia Plath is that she's enigmatic in so many ways and in so many levels. I will say that even if I tell you the whole narrative arc of this book, it won't be a spoiler because it is so enigmatic and so somehow obscure that it is impossible to spoil in any way. It starts with a deep sense of mystery in a way, and it finishes with the same deep mystery, but also with a huge sense of fulfillment, and especially a deep sense of rebellion, which is something, an idea that I absolutely associate with Sylvia Plath. Rebellion, mainly that's just nothing but a personal appreciation. This next one is a book that just recently arrived, but I have wanted to read this in English for quite a while. This book is by Philip K. Dick, To Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. If you are familiar with the film Blade Runner or with the film Blade Runner 2049, this book is the inspiration for those films. The so-called universe of those films are based on this book. And of course, this book is considered a cornerstone of sci-fi literature. It's the first time I'm going to read this book. I have high hopes about it. I read a long time ago some other Philip K. Dick book called Mary and the Giant, which has nothing to do with sci-fi. It is a story placed in the USA in the 50s, quite very mundane, not really the kind of story you would expect from a sci-fi writer, but a beautiful, beautiful book nonetheless. The next three books, I have this custom to read at the same time books that I do consider to be related one way or another. And these three books, in my opinion, are deeply linked to each other. The three books are The Individualist Artisan by the French anarchist Émile Armand. The other one is Tao the Watercourse Way by Alan Watts. And the third one is A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. Believe it or not, these three books are connected in so many ways, especially because on one hand, the book by Alan Watts has constant references to certain phenomena in the universe that are linked with the phenomena of the black holes, which is mainly the subject of Hawking's book and of Hawking's investigation into the physics. And on the other hand, Alan Watts is constantly referring or comparing the Tao philosophy with anarchism. Oddly enough, what he's in this book all the time saying, this is like anarchism. And myself being an anarchist and myself being very interested in certain acknowledgement of the happenstance of reality and of the happenstance of the universe and the not always logical reasons for why things happen in our reality. I found this reading very enriching and very pertinent, so to speak. I found it very amusing, sometimes very confusing, especially in the case of Hawking, because Hawking is in this book writing from a very deep and specialized point of view as a physicist, and of course as one of the most brilliant minds in our recent history. But nonetheless, I challenge myself to read this kind of books, and especially in the case of Hawking, because he had the same disease that I have now, and so I thought it would be interesting to me to explore perhaps mainly the motivations and the energy that made him survive this illness for almost 50 years. This is an illness, ALS, that has an average survival of 5 years, and he survived it for 50 years. So in any case, it is an interesting happenstance that I wanted to explore and just to try to understand his motivations. But in any case, I recommend so much these 3 books, and of course I will try to make sometime a more detailed exploration of my conclusions of this linked or joint reading. I am currently reading, almost finished, this beautiful graphic novel, Uzumaki, by Junji Ito. This one is perhaps one of the most amazing graphic novels I've ever read, not only because of the beauty of the book itself, it's a beautiful edition, but also because of the premises about fear and horror, and about the things that makes us feel afraid, and how we process those states, the fear and horror. It's a very, very interesting approach, the one of Ito, and I truly recommend this reading for anyone interested in horror and in terror and things of the sorts. I am disappearing beneath these books. Okay, the next book that I've been reading is the complete poetry of Jorge Luis Borges, the Argentinian writer. I just saw today that Jason Hannigan says that Borges is one of his 5 favorite writers, and I truly recommend you, Jason, to read the poetry of Borges. He was an amazing narrator, very intellectually challenging, and his poetry is no less fascinating and intellectually challenging. So it's a beautiful read. I am reading this in a slow pace because it is quite a huge volume, and because I try to read one poem per day just to enjoy it and to allow myself to reflect and to enjoy the beautiness of it. Another book that arrived recently into my library is this book by Herta Müller, The Fox Was Ever the Hunter. She's a Romanian Nobel Prize of Literature laureate. And I've been always, well, not always, but I've been recently interested in her work, mainly because there are so many people saying that she is very into a kind of deeply poetic use of the prose, and I truly dig that. I truly like a narrative reading with a deep sense of language and complexity. So I have high hopes with Herta Müller. I hope, and I wish to start this reading as soon as possible. Another recent arrival is this book by John Campbell, The Girl Aquarium. If you don't know Jane Campbell, she's a very active booktuber. She's part of the booktube community. She's quite a character, a beautiful person, and actually a very amazing booktuber. This is a collection of poetry, and I am always keen to get to know new poets, and I think in her case, she being a booktuber and an author makes it even more interesting. This one is a reread. It is a special kind of reread because I read this book in Spanish some time ago, and then that book, which became one of my favorite books of all time, I give it as a gift to a very special person, and because she found it also fascinating. And unfortunately, that edition in Spanish is no longer available, but this person was special enough to be granted with my copy. And I bought the English edition of this book, and this book is Burning Krum by William Gibson. It is a fascinating collection of short stories, and this book is considered to be one of the forefathers of the cyberpunk genre. But beyond that kind of definition, I would say that the poetic intricacies of this book and of the tales it contains is so deeply connected with our current life and the current state of technology that it has quite deep implications in our life, in our current life. So if you like good sci-fi, and if you like to feel yourself somehow immersed in the story, you will find this book very appealing. And finally, the last book that arrived to my library is this book by Andrea Salami called A Retrospective Sight. If you don't know who Andrea Salome is, she is one of the most influential female figures from the 19th century. She was a close friend with Rainer Maria Rilke, with Friedrich Nietzsche, and with a lot of other artists and philosophers and poets and writers and all that kind of people. And she was by herself a very thoughtful, intelligent, and sensitive writer. And this one is a book in which she revisits a lot of her thinking and her ideas, and of course a lot of her relationships with all these amazing characters she got linked with. So of course it is going to be a very savory reading, so to speak. And that's it. This has been my book, Currencies. I hope you find it interesting, and I hope some of these books could be appealing to you. Thank you very much for your attention. Please leave your comments below as usual. If you are not subscribed, don't do it. Or do it, but for the right reasons. Well, that's it. So thanks for your kind attention, and see you soon.